Morning. I'm good. How are you this morning? You got your coffee. Wake up coffee. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Caroline Jenner, COO of JA Worldwide, and we are going to have a set of conversations this morning involving a lot of wonderful, inspirational people. Some of them you've met, some of them you might not have met, but since we're all friends and family, I encourage you to ask questions and get involved in the conversation. So first of all, we'd like to invite Peter Ndonjo from Twiga. He's an entrepreneur, CEO, and co-founder of Twiga. So welcome, Peter, and also new to the Board of Governors. And Charles Moyala, Chair of JA Africa. He's a communications and development specialist and a columnist now and then for Ford's Africa. Thank you. Those of you who have been involved in our plans for this year, you will all know that this is the Year of Africa for JA. And we're we've missed January, but it's February now. And I wanted to ask Peter and Charles, if you think about the Year of Africa, and I know last night, Charles, you said it took us 40 years to get to the idea of having a Year of Africa. But what do you feel the Year of Africa means to you? What should our aspiration be, in your opinion?
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this session. It's nice to have you once again in South Africa for the first time. Now, for me, I think 2010 is just the beginning of a long stretch. It's 2010 is going to be over in 9 months, 10 months, 11 months. And then what next?
Yeah.
So for me, it's the defining decade for Africa. This decade is the beginning, right? And we need to use this year to set the roadmap for what we want to do for Africa over the next decade. Mm-hmm. If you look at all the institutions, the UN, the African Union, they're all talking about 2030, 2025, and all of that. The UN SDGs will come to conclusion, hopefully, with positive results in 2030. So this is perhaps the last mile for Africa to set the ball rolling on what it wants to do for the agenda for the youth, at least for JA. Right. So for me, 2010 is just the beginning. It's not going to begin and end with 2010. Yeah. The Year of Africa, for me, perhaps could be the decade of Africa. Right. And perhaps next year we'll go to Asia, we'll go to Latin America. But the themes will be the same: youth empowerment, education, innovation, soft skills. Yeah. So for me, the fact that we're flagging off with Africa is a milestone, is momentous, but it's not, for me, it's not going to be a negative, as it were. Yeah. There's a lot going on in Africa that we need to tap into. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just the beginning. And Jay will begin to do that and basically plug the gaps as we see them.
So it's just the start of something, and it's about issues that are extremely critical: the skills, the sustainability, the environment, all of these as well, that has to be all wrapped together. Peter, for you, the Year of Africa, is it similar to what Charles said? Do you feel that your window on the world of, I mean, you're just starting with us at JA Worldwide, and so you didn't know a lot about our thinking regarding the Year of Africa. So maybe you can hypothesize, if we were starting at zero, like you are, what does it mean to you?
Well, just building on what has been said, I think the Year of Africa, or the Decade of Africa, has also a lot to do with entrepreneurship. Because what you find is that there is an opportunity to leverage a heritage that you have with an organization like Junior Achievement to more or less harness the entrepreneurial spirit that exists on the continent, by doing it in a more structured and a more deliberate way. Just to give some context, I'm also with an organization called Endeavor, and I'm the vice chair of Endeavor in Kenya. Endeavor has been 3 years old in Kenya, and in 2019, we more or less, the Endeavor companies in Kenya have actually created about 4,000 jobs, 1,000 of those jobs just in 2019. And last year, those companies did $270 million in revenue.
Wow.
So now, that's an organization that's been here for 3 years and essentially has been able to harness those organizations in a very, very creative way. And a lot of this is not about even access to capital. It's around access to mentorship, access to best practice, just access to what does greatness mean when you leverage the world out there, or when you benchmark yourself to the world out there. And when you bring that thinking back to the continent, the impact then is so, so significant. And we're just getting started. So, of course, you know, Jay has been here for 40 years, 20 years in Kenya and Nigeria. And if you leverage that type of heritage, what can you then do by providing this skill set in a more deliberate way to the age set that is a target market? And then how do you then start scaling that up? So for example, with the example that we saw today, there's a very strong alumni network. How does that alumni network start giving back in a more deliberate way? And there's just so much goodwill in this space. And I think for me, the Year of Africa is how do you then put all these pieces together in a very deliberate way, and also setting up a milestone. Like, what does this look like in 10 years? So how many jobs do you want to create through the alumni? How many people do we want to impact? And just calling that out to be the milestone. And then we just be very, very deliberate how we get there.
This idea of job creation being the solution to many of the challenges in Africa, not just employability and not just getting jobs, but job creation is a little bit behind what you're saying, I think. And also keeping people here and seeing the opportunities where they are, correct?
Yeah.
So if you had a prognosis for the future of youth, I mean, one, you've said that it's going to be heavy on value creation, entrepreneurship, but how do you see, I mean, you're working with retail, you're working with the mass market, you're working in a really dynamic space, so how do you see the future of this hugely youthful population in Africa?
The way I see it is, I think companies need to leverage technology to solve some of the problems that we have on the continent. Just to give you some context, in the 1870s, the US was spending 52% of its disposable income on food. Today, that amount is down to 10%. If I look at across sub-Saharan Africa, that amount is still sitting at 50%. So it means that if people are generating all the income they generate to feed themselves, it's really very difficult to start creating opportunities. Sorry. It's very difficult to start creating opportunities across other sectors on the continent. So I think the first thing is leveraging technology to solve some of these problems that we have on the continent. Just to give you some insights in terms of what we're doing, one of the things that lacks in Africa is what I call structured access to the domestic market. So if you think about the US, you're able to access the US by focusing on maybe, 15 retailers, Walmart, Costco, Amazon, and that allows a lot of supply chain to organize very efficiently and provide very, very lower prices to consumers. What that does is that it spars spending in other sectors, and that creates new jobs and new opportunities. But what you find, for example, in Africa is that bulk of the market is informal, is mom and pop stores. So the supply chains going into those mom and pop stores are so inefficient. So unless you start focusing on how you can bring down the cost of food just by being more efficient, it stops you from doing so many other things. And if you look at across the continent, we're sitting on double-digit inflation on food. So, and the other thing is that because of this lack of structured access to the domestic market, financial institutions are dedicating less than 4% of their balance sheet to local agriculture, yet we say that it's about 30% of countries' GDPs. So there's this huge imbalance. And I think the role of entrepreneurship is, how do we leverage technologies to remove the friction on these value chains?
Yeah.
And the more we do that, the more it unlocks opportunity, the more it attracts funding, and you start driving this cyclical effect in the economy. So that's the way I see retail. It might be in a very, very narrow sense because of a sector that I've specialized in over the last couple of years. But I think that thinking about entrepreneurship in that context then starts having this significant impact.
Yeah, it's also the fresh ideas that come with, the innovations. Charles, from the public sector point of view, do you see that the public sector is is doing things right, wrong, upside down, forward? I mean, are they getting that acceleration in their policies that could help some of the things that Peter was saying?
Yeah, I'll give you the short answer and the
short
long
answer.
answer. The short answer is all of the above.
Yeah.
And the long answer is African governments need to invest more in soft skills.
In soft skills.
Yeah, soft infrastructure. More people, human resource,
Yeah.
education, innovation. I'm talking about JA. JA needs to have a bigger voice, share voice, in the engagement, in the partnerships that we seek to have with private and public sector. When was the last time we saw a statement from a JA leader in the newspapers on some of those issues? So the way we engage, we tend to think that we basically go into them to ask for support, for resources. So they see us in that prism. We need to also begin to behave differently as
Stronger voice?
advocacy champion, looking at the issues in the space that we deal with, right? And basically, not so much pontificating about it, but talking about the issues, thought leadership, doing a lot more. Perhaps you do a lot more in North America and Europe. We need to do a lot more in Africa, right, to have a bigger voice. So that when we go out seeking for strategic alliances and partnerships, there's also a sense of our existence from the partners that we go to. They have an idea of what we do. If we pick out 20, 35-year-olds from anywhere on the street, maybe only 2 or 3 of them, or 5 of them, most will have heard about JA. So again, what's the brand equity that JA has? We have this huge legacy, 40 years in Africa. But if you look at the numbers, look at the opportunity space, we haven't done much, and we need to do more. So for me, in that response, that long-form response talks about the prognosis for the future and what we need to do. Yesterday, I talked about 10, 50 million young people going into the workforce every year for the next 20, 30 years. And that's a challenge that we need to tackle with, JA, and what's JA's share of that. And we're not the only ones doing this, by the way.
No.
So.
No. And so you're advocating for a louder voice, maybe being a little bit more cautiously provocative, getting at the table with the public sector more than we are, not just working in the communities and local voices, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to get Ashish, for example. Ashish is the CEO for JA worldwide. I like to get Ashish, say, this is the year of Africa. He needs to talk to, between now and December, maybe 3 or 4 prime ministers or presidents to pitch a message.
Yeah.
That kind of parameters
to
set the ball rolling. I'd like to get some of our partners. We have the CEO of EcoBank here, right? He said to me yesterday that he has close to maybe 15,000, 16,000 staff, but he could actually do the work with 5,000. So the challenge he has, for example, is what do you do with 10,000 people or 10,000 families, potentially? That's the future. That's the next 5, 10 years. And what's the JA solution and model that we can give companies like Ease to help navigate that journey to the future of work that we all talk about?
Yeah. Over to you, if anyone has a question to Charles or Peter about the issues that they've raised before we move to another round. Yeah.
How do you imagine, beyond the traditional way that JA does its work in Africa, that we could take on this challenge to truly be the voice of change across the continent?
I think we're already doing what we should do. We need to do more. We need to deepen engagement. The gap is there, the gap you talk about. At any point in time, you have universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, and the education system. And it's not just at that level. It's also the same thing happens from primary school to high school. Not everybody who finishes primary school gets to go to secondary school. And not everybody who finishes secondary school gets to go to the next level, a tertiary level. So at every milestone in your growth career as a child in Africa, there are challenges. And we need to go beyond the template and look for domesticated solutions. There are issues with girl child education, for example, because of culture, because of people's way of life. For example, it makes more sense to some people to send the male child forward than to send the female child forward educationally. We need to change those mindsets. So whilst we bring on the templates from New York, from JA Worldwide, from Boston, we also need to recreate African templates that speak to the power houses or power hubs in Africa, the traditional institutions, the religious institutions, and the silent army of women who are the bedrock of every society, the market women. Are we engaging them enough? I don't think we're doing that enough. So perhaps in that kind of thinking, that kind of new way of thinking will help to address that gap you talk about.
Peter,
I just also want to build on that. Is this working?
I hope so.
Okay, it is. So I just want to build a little bit on that. When I was growing up, what my parents told me is you need to work very hard in school. So when you finish, you get a good job. And when you get a good job, you'll be able to take care of your family. And that narrative has been played across the continent. So you have a whole generation of folks who are growing up not knowing a lot about entrepreneurship or viewing it as something that is being very, very risky. So not too many people participate in that space. And I think what JA could do is more or less sell the dream of entrepreneurship. That actually it is a way of creating a livelihood, and you don't need to be seen as a misfit when you want to go into entrepreneurship. When I'm 43. When I was leaving Coke last year, I'd worked in Coca-Cola for 21 years. And I told my parents, by the way, I'm going to now join the company that I started on a full-time basis. And I'd expected, jubilation and a lot of upbeat disposition to what it is that I was saying, but there was a lot of concern. It's like, do you know you have 4 kids? And that's a narrative that I got. Now, if that's happening to me, then what narrative is also happening to school-going kids who are being taught that, entrepreneurship is risky, yet at the same time we're saying that, look, entrepreneurship is a solution to a lot of the problems that we have in Africa. And I think JA has what I'd call the audience of his kids at high school, and we're able to start building that disposition around, think about not the job that you're going to get, but what problem in society are you going to solve, and how are you going to make money solving it? And if everybody starts thinking about it from that perspective, and that change in mindset only is so impactful. And then from there, of course, then we need to start building the ecosystem around how do you access capital and how do you get financing and all. Because right now, traditional financial institutions do not provide capital. For me starting my business, my wife and I, we had to sell our house to fund our business. Now, many people might not have a house to sell. So how do you then start creating capital for people who are starting out, and what alternative sources of capital can we start generating? And that's a type of thinking that I think JA can start playing a very, very meaningful role. And that would then essentially start catalyzing a next generation of entrepreneurs who will actually solve most of the problems that we have on the continent.
We have a question over here. Ashish?
Thanks. I'm going to ask you both a tough question with a yes or no answer. Are you 100% certain in the next 10 years that JA in Africa can reach 10% of all young people in Africa? 100% certain.
Well, I just attending my first...
Well, I was going to say, we've got the first African member of our global board who's joining, and the board chair of JA Africa.
I would say that, yes. There's definitely a lot of things that we may need to think about differently, but first I'd want to appreciate what is being done and then seeing what we can build on top of that. But I think, yes, we can do it.
Charles, tougher for you.
I would say yes and no. No will be my first default. There's a lot of work to do. I think we're underestimating the reality in the marketplace. The number of kids in the villages who don't have connectivity. Here we're looking for connectivity in Joburg. Right, well, people don't even have phones. or can't afford phones. There's so much talk about telephony in Africa and all of these nice things, but it's just for a very small, minute percentage. And if you look at what governments invest in agriculture, in healthcare, in education, all of that combined, it's so minuscule. It's less than 20% year-on-year budget. They still spend a lot more on infrastructure, on defense, when there are no wars, and yet we still have epidemics. There's a lot of work to do, and I think JA needs to partner more with the public sector and get them to advocate with them to get more money devoted to that sector. So it's not a pessimistic no. It's a no because we need to do a lot more to make it 10%. And guess what? By 10 years' time, when we think we've done or we're nearly at 10%, you look at the birth rates and the death rates, and then we still have more work to do. So we're 1.4 billion people now in Africa, 1.3, 1.4. In 10 years' time, we're going to be like 2.5 or 2 billion territory. 10% of 2 billion is what, in terms of youth? That's 200? Is that right?
We've got better numbers. I'll show you in the board, but
Yeah.
It's a big number.
But the point is this.
But 60 million, over 600 million.
Regardless of the figures, we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And we need to do a lot more work to have a yes, to make it happen.
So the reason I asked this provocative question of you, Charles,
Yeah, sure.
the reason I asked this is because we teach in our courses young people that the chance of them succeeding goes up dramatically if they learn to believe they will succeed with 100% certainty, right? The theory of self-efficacy, that's what we teach. So I bet you, I'm glad the two of you answered the way you did. I bet you if I asked people in this room, if everyone in this room was 100% certain that we would succeed, I'm guessing we honestly would not have gotten a lot of yeses. So I think we ourselves have a mindset, just like you said. We don't have a seat at the table. We don't communicate at the levels that allow us to feel invincible that we will succeed. It's what we teach in entrepreneurship, right? You're going to be successful as an entrepreneur. You set the goal first, you find a way later. You don't develop a plan and you change the plan every year with 5 years. It just doesn't work that way. So I think I wanted to ask this provocative question for a reason, and let me help you all believe the answer is yes. Jack has led JAUSA for a number of years. JAUSA now reaches well over 8% of all young people and well over 10% of all middle school kids. So it's possible. Caroline has led JA Europe. We reach well over 8% of all high school kids across Europe. So we actually can do it. We just have to believe, really believe in this region that we can do it. That's my speech.
Thanks. Francesco.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I'm a believer, so 10% is where we need to go to. And in Africa, it's compounded by the challenge of growth in that segment of the population. As I said yesterday, 1 billion more Asian kids in population growth is 1 billion in the next 30 years, and in Africa it's the same number, starting with a much smaller base. So in one sense, you're growing with the tide, right? I mean, the tide is healthy in that sense. The question for me is the following. Given that we are very small today in terms of penetration in most of the African countries, and especially in the big population countries, what should our model be? I think, given that our penetration is very small and we want to increase it, the big discussion for me is, should we have an urban model, which is easier to reach the numbers and have impact, or we should spread around the continent and in the communities outside of big urban centers. All the data I've seen in the last 10 years leads me to believe that this urbanization, movement will continue. Today around the globe, 50% of our population lives in urban centers, and that will continue to grow to reach 75%, I would say, in the next 20 years. So my recommendation would be that to make it easy for us, or easier for us, to reach more kids than we are today, first let's focus on the big urban centers, and then we figure out how do we extend the reach outside. Would you agree with that or not?
So you've asked a question and you've provided an answer, essentially. Yes. So I think JA needs to be ambidextrous. We need to do that mix urban, peri-urban, and rural, because that's where the people are. That's where the young people are. All the statistics, all the figures talk about urbanization being a growing trend, like you've said. So yes, we can't avoid being in the urban areas, but we also must not close our eyes to the opportunity space in the rural areas.
Peter?
So I just want to echo that thought. I want to echo that thought. If you look at the difference in urbanization between East Africa and West Africa, where East Africa is about 25% urbanized, West Africa is about 50% urbanized. So East Africa is about 25, West Africa is about 50% urbanized. What's amazing is that the rate of urbanization is about 4.2% across the continent. That's like 2x Asia. Asia is about 2.2%. So when you have this high level of urbanization, the reality is that most of the impact can actually be centered around the cities. So when I look at, for example, and this is just looking at it from a retail standpoint, when I look at Africa, I don't see 50, 52, 53 countries. I see Nairobi, I see Dar es Salaam, I see Addis, I see Kampala, I see Lagos, I see Kano, Ibadan, Abuja. I see cities. Because, and if you concentrate on those cities, the reality is that, they're easier to access, and that's where you start creating impact. And then what you could then say is that, using the Pareto rule, if I then take care of the urban cities, then I can start focusing on the rural. Because the key thing also is that you have limited resources. So if you have limited resources, you have to focus on these resources on where you can generate the highest level of impact. So, and it's not to say that those living in the rural areas are not important, but the reality is that they're harder to access. Now, if resource were not constrained, yes, you can go for the whole spectrum, but I think it's just about prioritizing. So that's just how I see it from where we stand. Now, if I look at, for example, an organization like Endeavor, we can focus on all the cities on the continent, but the key thing is that we've been very choiceful. So we say that, we will start with Nairobi, we'll start with Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Lagos. And as we grow, we will start getting into more and more cities. And as you spur entrepreneurship, those companies are bound to create more jobs and have greater impact over a period of time. So, and I know it's a bit of a controversial view. Again, I'm new to JA. But I think that's just my layman's view at this point.
Thanks. Last word. What would you like to leave us with? We're going into a board meeting, so we need,
You need what? Inspiration?
Yeah.
So we all like numbers. Numbers are good. 2%, 3%, 20%, 50%, 500,000, all of that. But we're talking about people here. Let's not forget that 50% of the kids in these urban areas don't have breakfast most of the time. And more than 50% in the rural areas don't have breakfast. But they still go to school after fetching water for the household chores. And then they come back in the evenings and have to tend and look after their parents' small business or whatever. And then in between 8 o'clock and 2 p.m., JA encounters them in school, and we're teaching them what to do and all of that. So half of the time they're hungry. So let's remember that whilst we're trying to impact, right, we need to also think about a model that enables them to better receive our message, right? And that's about engagement, that's about partnership, that's about going into the conversations with the relevant bodies, that enable education to happen. Most of these schools don't have toilets, for example. These are issues that we need to deal with. You can say, that's not our problem because we're not in that space. It's about water, sanitation, hygiene. No, but that's also relevant to the fecundity of our message and what we want to do. Mm-hmm. So as you talk about North America, the infrastructure level and the dynamics are different from Africa. So we need to think about domesticated solutions that better address the realities of the children in Africa, and at the same time advancing, the message and the work and mission of JA. So maybe by 2010, maybe we'll do 8%, 9%, So it's an abbreviated yes, so to say, if that will keep Ashish happy, being an optimist.
It's not about keeping happy, but I think you made it very real for us, so thank you for making it real.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to understand the reality of the marketplace, essentially. That's it.
Thank you,
from me.
Charles.
Thank you.
Peter, last word.
So I want to go back to something that I find very dear in strategy, and it's called spikiness.
Spikiness?
Spikiness, and that's about, you can't succeed in everything. So at times you have to look at, what is my core strength as an organization, and how can I focus my core strength on this small area? It might be a very, very small area that might actually give me the biggest result. Because what you find is when you look at the whole maybe issue around empowering kids or empowering the next generation of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of things that you can focus on. And but the key thing is that what area do you want to really create impact? And if you create impact in that area, then it means that you really need to really focus your resources on that small area, because then that would then give you the biggest return or the biggest bang for the buck. Because at the end of the day, I think we're an organization that could also do quite a bit, but the reality is that we have limited resources. Mm-hmm. So with those limited resources, how do you then create that spikiness internally to ensure that we're then able to focus on what really matters, or what it is that we can actually move the needle?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think you've left us with some very interesting reflections for the board. Maybe spikiness will become, a good segue. So thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to bring up the next panel. And I would like to ask Simi Ogugu, CEO of JA Nigeria, and she told me that she will reach this quarter student number 1 million since the beginning of JA Nigeria. Correct? And I think it was founded in 1999.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
And Phil Mlambo from Zimbabwe, JA Zimbabwe, welcome. His passion is growing people. They will have 62,000 students this year, 72,000 by the end of the year. Congratulations. And we have Alessimo Mwanga, who is, let's say, a social entrepreneur, would you say? Yes, running YEEP, which is the largest youth entrepreneurship exchange program. And it's based here in South Africa. You've been running it for 3 years, correct? So welcome. And then we have 2 alumni with us. Vumi Mzweli, who is running Hesed Consulting. Welcome. And we have Nutuku Shezi. Did I say that right? Wow. Okay, I'm getting lots of practice on that. And this, I really have to ask you about this. I have to ask you right now, if it's okay. You're running a company called Livestock Wealth, and you're calling it crowd farming. Crowd farming. I have never heard of crowd farming before. Crowdfunding of farming. Okay, can you just please explain to the group what crowd farming is?
So crowdfunding is crowd farming is the crowdfunding of farming. So just played on those words, based on the notion that many people want a farm, but it's too expensive to get involved in the farm, buying the farm or leasing the skill needed. But you can get involved in the farming not by being involved in its balance sheets, profit and loss, but by being involved in terms of owning the real assets that are growing on the farm. So if a farm has got cows, you own the cows on the farm, and for a season, while from pregnancy to the sale of the winners, or if it's macadamia trees or whatever trees from the time they are planted, and you exit when they're sold. So you're farming by owning assets on the farm, by owning things as they grow on the farm. Yeah, that's the long and short of it. Yeah, thanks.
Are you coming from a farming background? You understand the whole industry?
No, I used to be. I used to be with Accenture. I was a strategy consultant in my previous life, and after a while, the entrepreneurship bug really bit, and I went on and did some other business in automotive, like panel beating and spray painting. Then 2014, I said, okay, this thing has been in my head for like 5 years because it kept coming out. I kept pushing it away. Then eventually we started, yeah. So we've grown now. We're 5 years in the business now. We're managing about 80 million rands. That's about $5 million worth of assets. In the South African context, that is really big. But in the global context, that's some small. So our clients, our assets are here in SA, but our investors are from everywhere. So we've got Americans owning cattle, owning macadamia trees that are growing in South Africa, but we're looking to grow and into other countries as well, where we're partnering with farmers who really need the funding, who ordinarily wouldn't get a loan from the bank. But we're able to onboard that farmer on the strength of one, his credit risk. We still have to do that, but also his reputation. But then we know that the exposure is not on the balance sheet or the profit and loss. The exposure is on the assets that's growing. So, and as long as the asset has got value, it's redeemable. Should the farm go flat, the asset still belongs to the investor, and it's still got value, which makes the risk much lower. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. That's great. Fumi, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do? You've had a string of awards. You're a famous person generally already, from what I read. But what kind of consulting do you do in your company?
So I run Hesed Consulting. It's a South African firm. It started in South Africa. I started in 2012. We're now in Nigeria, Rwanda, Botswana, and South Africa. And we actually specialize in coaching, predominantly career coaching. So we help organizations for the executives to accelerate their careers, as well as do lots of reverse mentoring. So millennials are coming into the workplace. How do you start to prepare for them? So basically, I like to think of myself as a teacher. So I do the coaching. I am on Kai FM. I write for Bella Niger, The Guardian in Nigeria. And I'm on Kai FM and Duma FM in Botswana.
Wow. Okay. And Alessimo.
Yes.
Now, you've been running this very interesting organization,
Thank you.
but you're also partnering with JA.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about what this youth entrepreneurship exchange program is about?
Sure. So YEEP Africa is an organization that a group of friends who are professionals, professionals in large corporate organizations decided to come together and start a youth entrepreneurship exchange program that we could host annually in South Africa, basically bringing together young people from different African countries to Johannesburg for 3 days and provide them with access to mentors and coaches and entrepreneurs and basically exposure to the entrepreneurship ecosystem at an early age. So we generally target young people between the ages of 16 to 30, and we provide them with seed capital that we source from angel investors to be able to assist them with working capital post the boot camp that we host. So 50 entrepreneurs are selected, and we source these entrepreneurs through partnerships like JA South Africa, who have beneficiaries that could benefit from a program like this, and youth development organizations that also target youth development, and also have an open call application to participants interested to join. I remember the second time we hosted this in Johannesburg, we had over 100 applications without really promoting it a lot. And yeah, so basically we provide pre-seed capital to young entrepreneurs interested in entrepreneurship between the ideation and early stages. Thank you.
Great. So, Simi, there was a survey done, I think, 2017, but it was in Kenya and Nigeria, and it was talking about that youth, I mean, in fact, we talked about it in the earlier panel, that youth are going in more and more in this direction of entrepreneurship. They're just really, they like it. The idea of being their own boss, setting up their own business, that this is an aspiration that more and more of them have, rather than the traditional employment path. Is that the reality that you see in Nigeria?
Good morning, everyone. So Jeff mentioned earlier about the statistics of students who leave secondary school and enter university. In Nigeria is actually much lower, higher, depending on what you're looking at. We have about 1.8 million students who graduate from secondary school every year. Our universities can only take 500,000. And if you count all the other polytechnics and everything, it's maximum 700,000. So that's 1.1 million people who are being forced into the employment market with no skills whatsoever for employment. And so it's not that it's something they like, it's a necessity. Okay. You have to become an entrepreneur because there aren't enough jobs for university graduates, much less secondary school students who have no university education. And it is a highly entrepreneurial society. A lot of people want to be their own boss. And so what we find at Junior Achievement is if you start giving them those skills in secondary school, then when they leave and they're not able to go into university, they can become entrepreneurs. And we're finding more innovative ideas coming out of young people who see problems. I think somebody said earlier about entrepreneurship being solutions to problems. We're seeing very innovative ideas coming out of secondary school students who are developing businesses that are making millions of naira because they're solving a problem in their community. So yes, it is a real issue.
It's true, okay. What do you say, Phil? I mean, Zimbabwe, completely the other end of the continent. So what do you see? Is that the reality in Zimbabwe too?
Thank you, Caroline. Maybe as well, I may start by saying more than what Simi said. For Zimbabwe, it could be worse because of the economic circumstances at the moment. Yeah. At the moment means for the past 20 years. So that's what we mean by at the moment. With that now, whether the young people choose to be enterprising by choice or by default is neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is they are choosing, is this the only option available? That's number one. Again, there's also plenty of underemployment. So when we've got your graduates coming out of...
Underemployment.
Yes, please. Yeah. When we've got your graduates coming out of our universities with nothing to do but to vent airtime, you understand what that does. So again, the culture of having to go out there and try to earn a living becomes high. Again, maybe more by default. We also have a government that has told us that everyone must aspire to be their own boss. Not because that's what they believed, because they saw that there was no investment coming to the country. So the only way to pacify the young people was to say, start your own business and do your own thing. Even as they were ill-prepared for starting their own businesses. Even there were no supporting structures for them to start their own businesses. But again, at the end of the day, that's unfortunately what we are seeing. And I was to say, when that happens in a country like ours, we don't see disaster in it. I mean, we believe in preparing our young people for the world, not the world for the young people. So when things are what they are, we have to endure and make sure that young people get prepared for the world of work, get prepared for decent employment, and get prepared to compete those who are not cut out to be entrepreneurs, to compete and think like entrepreneurs, and then get the space in the few jobs available. So that becomes our take as Junior Achievement Zimbabwe. Those who are wired to be entrepreneurs, we prepare them. Those who are not wired to be that, we make them think like entrepreneurs and then be productive in whatever job opportunity that they get.
Vuma, do you think that this aspiration of being an entrepreneur, was it something you always wanted to be, or was it something you did because you had to?
I think my story is a little bit different. I had a fantastic career in corporate. Yeah. But as life happens, I always thought at 30 I'm out. So I turned 30 and I resigned from being an executive of Vodafone.
You're scaring a lot of people in this room.
So it was really about, because I thought, what's the worst case scenario? I'll have to get dog food for my dog or send it to my mother. So I'll be just fine. So that was the worst case scenario for me. And I come from a very entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
But I find it very, sorry, I just want to comment on this. The experience I'm finding in South Africa with regards to entrepreneurship, it's not aspirational, which I think resonates across the continent. It's survivalist. If you don't become an entrepreneur, what are you going to eat? We've got a similar challenge in that in South Africa, if 1 million children start first grade, by 7th grade, we've only got 750,000. By matric, we've only got half of those. So we've only got 500,000 actually matriculating. And of those, we don't have funds to take you to university. And even if you do get to university, then how do we give you work experience? Our government has done the YES program, where they're making young people earn about 3,500 rands. I don't understand dollars well, but that's like, let's say $200. $200 a month for you to get work experience. And after that learnership is done, you're out. So you actually now, what I always say to my clients is, go into corporate with the idea that this is a university for you to understand how sales and marketing works in order for you to become an entrepreneur, because you're going to have to be.
That's the same for you, Natuko. Did I say it correctly? Natuko.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. Everyone just calls me Shezi Tutuoz.
Really?
Yeah, that's my surname. Yeah, don't worry. So I joined JA in 1996. I was 16 years old, but in Durban. So my teacher found out about this program and said, "Okay, I think you may like this thing." Well, and I did, So I think it was a 6-month program we did in the evenings. So what I found there was that, yes, my mom, who was a teacher, was enterprising. Because I think if the entrepreneurship is not at the house, it's difficult to really learn it. Because I think that my son, or daughter now, will do way bigger things than me, because they've had entrepreneurship in the house as much of their lives as possible. Whereas people who don't have parents who are entrepreneurs, really, to them, it's really tough. I cannot lie on that one. Because entrepreneurship, you copy and observe, and you think, okay, if my dad can do it, surely I can. That's what I've seen in me. So that has enabled me to build one business, the next. I think I've done about 14 different businesses in my short life. Most of which failed, but they say businesses never fail. They only run out of money. But that allowed me then to walk from one business, build the next, and then understand the scalability. Like Livestock Wealth now, we're building it to list it on the New York Stock Exchange, which wasn't the mindset I had 10 years ago. But I think those steps at a young age are key, and that's why I value the work that JA does, and the amount of learning in that 6 months course, I think it was, that I did. It really helped in terms of just building the stuff that makes an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Simo, you were born an entrepreneur, made an entrepreneur. How did that happen for you?
I think I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from a very, 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 very young age.
Yeah.
I think I was fortunate, like everyone here, we're being exposed to entrepreneurship very early. Although my parents are both in the medical field, they also had side hustles, let me put it that way. So we were exposed to that. My mom did a lot of chicken farming. My dad also did a lot of selling on the side, and we were pulled into helping sell the chicken and pluck the chickens, and we were forced to do this thing. And also, my parents coming from East Africa and West Africa, being exposed to farming in those communities as well, encouraged me to want to also have something that I could do on the side. Like everyone else here, I've had a really great professional work life, and I think it is quite essential for young people in Africa who are looking to go into entrepreneurship to understand that they do need some work experience and exposure to know how to sell, because you should be entrepreneurial in your work experience life as well. But I think most importantly, to understand how to use money well. When you're working, I think a lot of us young people, I should speak for myself, I don't know about you, but you get a good job and you spend all that money on non-essentials, and then you realize, oh wait, I actually still want to start a business, and then jump right into it without actually properly saving to venture into this life. And I think that did help me a bit, because towards the end of me leaving after I got to 30 as well, I was just like, okay, I'm enough. My parents obviously had a heart attack, and because they come from a professional working experience, they were a bit cautious about me jumping into it full-time, but you actually need to jump into it to be able to drive things. But obviously prepared for that journey, and a lot of young people don't understand that, and with the gig economy coming into play, I think it's actually very essential that we get young people ready for the huge change that is about to come, whether it's entrepreneurship or work experience.
Well, you've all talked about how important it is to get the message across to the younger generation early, because of all the issues you've raised, the challenges in the community, economic, social, everything. So, Phil, I mean, if you think about what JA is supposed to be providing some of those answers, some of that role in the community. So what should we be doing more of, in your opinion, or what could we do better in order to address this challenge of, African youth in the future?
Thank you. I think the first thing that I think we need to deal with are the structural issues. There is the wounded soul theory of African entrepreneurship, right? Which says the African entrepreneur is somebody who has got either a harmed background, they lost their parents, they grew up on their own, and so on and so forth. So they don't feel empathy with the community. So if they're only a grinding mill, right, they don't close their grinding mill because there's a funeral next door. They will still be running business. And then they'll only go and attend the burial and come back to their business. While we think everyone should then just give free grinding mill services or coke or bread because there's a funeral, they don't. We think it's because they don't feel the empathy with the community. But they are wounded souls, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, you also have got a group of even parents who still think our young people must go out there, get good grades, go to university, and queue for the job.
Yeah.
You also have got systems in some cases where even the school heads who think like, if you are going to make young people run business in the JA Company program in the school, are they not going to be distracted from their academic work, running around for this? You are creating what we call sources, the little pickpockets. That's what they're trying to create for us in this environment. Yeah. So that needs to be taken care of. That's number one. But number two, when you even interact with young people in their spaces, in the schools, let's agree that they are learning. Let them make losses, let them make profits, and let them enjoy the experience. Those who come out of it thinking they want to branch out and do even better for themselves, they will create jobs for those that will fall by the wayside. If we're interacting with those that we're interacting with out of school, again, let's focus not on what we can provide as JA, not what our curriculum is, but meeting them at their points of need. What is it that they require? If they started something, at what point did they fail? Is it marketing? Is it mentorship? Is it market linkage? What is that they require?
So you think we need to be much more specific about the need at a particular, maybe it's a moment in the experience, or that's what you're saying? We can be much more diagnostic in a way?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Simi? You're running, I think, the largest JA operation in Africa. And what are you finding that, we need to do better in order for you to do your job?
I think, and I think this is where Phil was going, I think we need to identify the relevance of JA, particularly as it relates to alleviating poverty. It is the biggest problem that governments across Africa are facing. I know definitely in Nigeria, with all the statistics coming out that Nigeria now has the largest number of extremely poor people in the world. We're not the biggest country in the world, but we have the highest number of over about 90 million people live in extreme poverty in Nigeria. That's almost half the population. And so what they're looking for is what are the relevant things that we can do, the government, because now we're really talking to the government, where we realize that to scale, we need to partner with the public sector. And what they're saying is, how is JA relevant to solving this poverty problem? That's essentially the number one answer we need to come up with in this Year of Africa. How do we and we know in JA that company program gives our secondary school students these skills. JA company program students are less likely to be poor than their fellow secondary. But how do we communicate that to the governments of Africa? What are the things that we need to do? Maybe it's Ashish speaking to presidents, like my chair said, but it's really finding that delta and really studying it. We signed an agreement with the Minister for Youth recently in Nigeria, where it actually went into the president's communique going out about his goal to eradicate poverty, and junior achievement was mentioned in his communique, and people were like, oh, junior achievement. We're seen as this American organization that's a nice to have. Like, what's your relevance in solving the poverty problem? And so what Charles had said earlier about domesticating some of our programs, so they don't see us as the American organization in Nigeria, but as a Nigerian organization solving the problem of poverty in Nigeria, is really the next thing that we need to come up with.
Very interesting. Alasimo, would you say that you're partnering with JA. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you're seeing how well JA fits to the environment that you're seeing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be partnering with JA. Mm-hmm. So do you feel that we could be doing our job better, even in our partnership with you?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the beneficiaries, especially the ones that become top of the program that head off to the Africa competition in Ghana, do extremely well when they come to our program. They usually are in the top 5. In fact, last year, JA South Africa was one of the 5 winners as well that received the 10,000 Rand cash prize. The year before that, it was JA Swaziland as well that won, cash prize as well. So amongst the top 5, with all the participants that we have, they definitely are JA beneficiaries. And I think the skills that they get and acquire from the program throughout the year is very beneficial to them to actually understand the principles of and the foundations that's actually really required to get a business running. But then obviously following through that, they obviously need more support in the sense of how to attract markets, increasing the sales practically, and having coaches that support them through that, and also meeting with other young entrepreneurs like themselves. The mindset part is also quite critical. So definitely the program is very valuable, but I think extending partnerships with external stakeholders that are similar values and have the mutual goals and objectives to reach the objective of JA's proposed achievements and outcomes in the next decade, I think will be essential to be able to achieve that.
Because the 3 of you have been saying, we need to go deeper. Yeah. We need to hit harder on those things. So, Shezi, you went through the experience yourself. Looking back, do you think that, you wish something could have been a little different because you had later experiences? Or, what would you advise looking back?
Yeah, I think in South Africa, and in fact most of the post-colonial Africa, entrepreneurship has a stigma attached to it. It seems to be low life. It seems to be unsexy. Rather, if I'm studying, I need to wear a suit to go to work. That's most people's ambition, to spin with a chair at the office. I think because that's the biggest inhibitor of growth in Africa. If I clean toilets and I make $1 million, people appreciate my million more than my hustle of cleaning the toilets. So we need to really rebrand entrepreneurship and really make people to understand that it's a 10-year play, not like a mushroom that just appears and it's on Instagram tomorrow and then I'm balling with a Lamborghini the next day. I think that's the one. That's the one thing. Like the amount of pain I've gone through in the last 14 years to build myself as an entrepreneur, the late nights I do, they're not on Instagram. People, then you know, the entrepreneurship they have is this guy who's like really balling Jay-Z type of thing, popping the champagne. There needs to be a rebranding, really, of what it means to be an entrepreneur, and what it can make one achieve. I think that's really my one thing. I wish if as a kid, if I'm selling sweets, I'm not looked at as, oh, this guy is poor. Whereas after I've sold those sweets, I've got money that you don't have. And most people really, like, people cannot sell. They will sit with a harvest of potatoes, and the potatoes they rot because they don't want to go. Like last week, I was going door to door with my degree in engineering, with my Accenture, what, because we were producing some basil, all these nice herbs and things. So the big chains are taking long to take up our products. So what I did is put my degree and my experience and my what, put it on my back pocket. And I went to the Indian market there and talked to the aunties there. And they took our stuff, you know, and I'm there and forgetting that, okay, that I'm running XYZ. I go there and sell right to the people that will buy and pay me. Someone else will look at that and say, hey, this guy, he was on CNN, he was on CNBC, and here he's at the Indian markets in Durban talking to aunties that, you know, because I had to do that, because at the end of the day, if I've done that, I've got cash in my pocket, that I can grow my business, I've got customers, and I can say, here's revenues, whereas someone who's constantly emailing ShopRite checkers and whoever, waiting for off-takes will never get that. So I think that's, for me, that's really the one thing. That's it's the mindset thing, and which can be changed by branding, because how the mindset got there was by branding in the first place.
Thank you very much for that. Bhumi, what can we do differently? What could we have done as JA to make your experience even better, even more impactful?
I think you're addressing this because I spoke to someone yesterday and they said you've got Gather alumni.
Yeah.
So for me,
we do.
Yeah.
All your friends have to be on there.
So for me, I think it was learning about entrepreneurship, like Ntutuko said, at home, having the experience of now being a mini CEO and running my own business and realizing it's not that easy, and then sort of disengaging with entrepreneurship and going to the workforce, like being a waitress, all of that, and then realizing, no, I need to write my own checks. So if those lessons had been reinforced throughout, it would have made my jump into entrepreneurship full-time a little bit smoother. And I also think it's the communication of the reality of entrepreneurship. Like in Tutsugo, it's rough. When they come and they repossess your cars because you said you want to be your own boss, and this is the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's the how do you deal with the anxiety where it's the 30th, payday's tomorrow, 6 people's checks need to be paid, and you guys have made a loss this month. So you're borrowing from Paul to pay Peter until your books are back in the green. So the reality of it, I would have appreciated so much to say, yeah, one day the millions will come, but the journey looks like this. Yeah. And I think having that authentic conversation with people who have been successful would have impacted it even more for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking the two of you would have been, the three of you, in fact, would be fantastic, mentors and examples to explain to young people as they go through these, real experiences to share. So I'm going to go last round, but does anybody have a question for anybody on the panel?
Salvatore, CEO of JA in Europe. We talked about leveraging technology to do our things better. How do you perceive that, where do we stand today as JA, and also when you went through our programs, where do you think we can really leverage technology to do more, to do better, to more efficient?
Thanks for the question. Simi, do you want to jump on that? Phil?
So we have added a fourth pillar to JA, which is digital literacy and digital skills to our programs. And this year, well, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started this massive push for digitalization of our programs and processes. And we realized that in Nigeria especially, we are not going to be able to reach, the millions of students we can reach if we don't leverage technology. So that push started when we turned 15 in 2014 about, just having our board strategize what to do. And over the past year and a half, we've had major partnerships with Google and IBM and Microsoft and a few other companies to put together a digital transformation committee to figure out how do we solve this problem. There are two sides to it. One side is it's absolutely necessary for our students to have the digital skills because as jobs are getting automated, there are even fewer jobs and they need those skills. The other side of it is that the access is not there. So our schools are not wired for technology. We don't have the infrastructure. Where you have the computers, there's no electricity or there is no data. And so we're trying to figure out how to solve all those problems. What we're excited about is that there seems to be a push for Nigeria to develop the next Silicon Valley. There are a lot of technology companies in Nigeria that are trying to build a tech hub. And so as JA, we're trying to ride on that wagon and say, well, we're going to create the pipeline of talent for you. So you need to invest in us and invest in secondary school and primary school kids because these are the people you're going to employ when you have that hub. And so that's where we are now, pushing most of our programs. We recently got on the JA Worldwide LMS to do our digital company program, and we're pushing other programs to also become digitized as well.
Sure, thank you. In Zimbabwe, what we are doing more at the moment is the process more than the product. What I mean by that is we're looking at making sure that we've got a couple of programs that we put on digital platforms to get that going. Number one, to get young people access JA materials, and we reach more. But also number two, by cutting on the cost of support to the teachers who are helping us and the volunteers who are helping us mentoring the company program, that they can call into the office, that they can check on our platforms, see what's happening. So what we've done to date is saving a group of volunteers from SAP who were on such a sabbatical, who came for 4 weeks last year, filled with everything, even did a demo, a typo, and getting it done, and getting the board endorsement that we should do it, and that this year, part of our 72,000, 10% should come from digital reach.
Okay. All right. You had a question, Jeff? Yeah. Was it?
I loved your comment about survivalist versus aspirational in terms of the view on, how people wind up as entrepreneurs. And I'm curious, Simi and Phil, as you think about the design of programs, how would programs be different if you were targeting those groups separately? So targeting the groups that had to be entrepreneurs literally to survive, and the groups that were choosing to be entrepreneurs because it's aspirational. How should programs be differentiated to accommodate that?
Well, one school of thought is they shouldn't, because you want the survivalists to also become aspirational in entrepreneurship. And that's the short answer. The long answer would be getting those who have been entrepreneurs and who have been successful to be more visible and to be, those who have made their money ethically as entrepreneurs. Because what we also find in Nigeria is you have people who came into money somehow and then went into entrepreneurship with the money. And so there's this, disdain or something like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur too, but I want to first make money the way you made money, so don't come and preach entrepreneurship to me when I know you made your money, selling drugs or something. And so we have to find those people who have made their money ethically and celebrate them and really put them in a way that they can actually mentor, so it doesn't have to be going into classrooms, maybe do videos on Gather, but celebrate them in the way that they made their money and the way that who they are now, so that people actually see it's not just the MD of Chevron and Citibank, that they want to be like, but these entrepreneurs who've made their money ethically and are quite successful.
Fumi? Sorry, Phil, did you want to respond to that?
Sure, I was going
Go ahead.
Yeah, he invited me to, so
Yes.
thank you. I was going to say probably much of the difference for our market is on where we target them. When we are in high school, it's more aspirational, so that they will start doing small things even as they go to college and so on later in life. But when we meet with young people who are out of school, no full certificate of anything, maybe some bit of vocational skill attained somewhere, or those that have been out of college with a good qualification but no job for 3-4 years, who can't compete for entry-level jobs anymore with the fresh graduates. There is now survivalist. There's now about what can you do? How can we help you build what we have to earn a living? When you do earn a living, how can we grow that business? That's why I was talking about meet them at that point of need.
Yeah. So last word to you, if there are no more questions. Vumi, I want to ask you, what is the motto you live by? What
As an
do you...
entrepreneur?
Well, I don't know, whatever.
Konke kuyadlula. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Okay, great. Alasima, what do you live by? What's your motto?
Try and try and try again. Never stop until you get what you want.
Yeah. Okay. Shazi?
I say, don't bring into today. Don't judge what today can be based on what happened yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Phil, what's your motto? What do you live by?
There's plenty to think of, but at work, what I believe, especially in what we are trying to do, is that we are bringing entrepreneurs onto the world. These are passionate people that are risk takers and so on. But again, I believe passion without discipline can be chaotic. So we need JA.
Thank you, Phil. Simi?
What do I live by? I think there are a number of things. I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe that my goal is to be like Christ. And that means that I'm here for the needy. I mean, he came to help the needy, and really that's my driving goal, that everywhere I go, I want to be like Christ, which is to heal the sick and help the needy. And so when I consider the relevance of what I do with Junior Achievement is how much can we do to help the needy? How can we change the delta in Nigeria from the story of poverty to a story of wealth?
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Very, very good discussion. Thank you.